Hello everyone, and welcome back once again to Springrealms, our wonderful little patron server, where evidently this area is getting colonized. Ostensibly, I think Resender is setting up shop around here, but we have had a bunch of work done on the dungeon, mostly building work, it has to be said. So we're going to be doing a quick little time-lapse, and then I will talk a little bit about why it currently looks the way it does. But, before I spoil you all by looking in its general direction, let's get to that time-lapse. Enjoy! Right, hope you all enjoyed that. So this is the current look of the dungeon. If I hop into spirit mode, I'll get night vision, so I'll be able to see everything in weird lighting, so consequently I would, but this should do the trick for the moment. So the lines, of course, are all based on where the structure blocks are, which serves as our region. We probably will be taking out a fair few of them, moving things around a bit to more conform to the terrain, partially because there's currently about 180 of them. So, yeah, that's a lot, even for a dungeon here around here. But you can see we have a pretty straightforward plan. So the idea is that there are dry docks, about 6 different levels of them, that have these sort of piers, and alongside many of those piers are different boats. Aeneas has specifically called for many different kinds of boats in many different colours, hence one over here, including, and I quote, one gay rainbow boat. Or rain boat, I guess? I don't know. This is the original boat that Aeneas was working on, which is looking pretty dang aesthetic, I have to say. I'm trying to remember if I have actual access to lighting. We'll find out in a quick moment. There we go. Yes, I do. So, this is one of the larger boats that we currently have, but we'll be adding a bunch more over the coming periods of time, unstated. And the basic idea is you wander around from one level to another trying to find mischief points that you can smash pots or flip switches or do whatever to catch the attention of the Harbour Master, who is responsible for controlling this entire complex of multiple things. And then there's teleport points that take you to different levels, though they might not necessarily be consecutive levels, or even the level that they say they are anymore, because things have kind of gone a bit awkward and awry around here. But I have a few notes here from Aeneas that I had a conversation with to try and just nail down exactly what this place was meant to be like, and the resounding idea was more or less Borg Sphere, which I love the idea of, that there's, like, this is a big cube that anyone can just bring along a skyship and park inside of from any direction. Because it's multi-level, then you can move in full 3 dimensions. But yeah, here's probably one that we'll be taking out, because it doesn't really cover much of anything. But yeah, anyways. So, On the notes, besides the multiple levels of dry docks, we're aiming for about 6 levels. We have multiple examples of ship designs, some of which will be broken apart. So we might have something similar to this one that has been torn in half or suffered some kind of collision, and maybe parts of it are actually in different dry docks inside of the harbour. So you can walk through one and end up in the other, even though they're not actually physically connected. Because that's going to be a big kind of like theme for this dungeon, is that things are going to be wonky. Things are going to be spatially disjointed and whatnot. We obviously don't have the bedrock box put together just yet, but that is coming up. And let me see, nuisance points we have. So we have the control point. Well, we have the pot smashing, which is our current example. So if I just smash this, hear a noise, and we'll be fighting a mini-boss, apparently. Oh, and apparently that has sent Kyo off to Scalpa. But we got the mini-boss there, we've got the different mobs, we've got the status effects and all sorts, and they'll all be randomly selected and applied, so every time that you cause mischief, you have to deal with that, which has the added benefit of dissuading people from camping one particular nuisance point, because every single time they smash it, they have to deal with the consequences. And oh, here comes Kyo, just as I talk about mischief and consequences. But that's it. That is a nice little point, so you have to keep moving around. Motion is an important element, because of course this is the dungeon of the god of motion, and travel, and exploration, and all sorts of other things. And Aeneas is the one responsible for figuring out how things should move. Then combining with Phoenix of the Bow to create archery and the like, and a whole bunch of other things. God interactions are lovely things to think about. Let's see, cohesive block palette for the harbour, more varied for the ships. So we have a palette over here, which is what we will be using when we're building this. So currently the whole thing, more or less, is made out of this smooth andesite, but we'll be adding in prismarine bricks, we'll be adding in bits of obsidian, and some, I believe that's purple? Yeah, blue stained clay, my mistake, and other blocks as well for highlighting and some contrast and some colour and distinction and such. There's going to be buildings and huts and a few different like cranes around here. I wish I could make them actually move, but we do with what we have. And we had this idea just during our conversation that since this is in the sky and goes really high and is a harbour which is known for seagulls and the like, we should have an effect that randomly happens. If I just go all the way to the top here, and we probably want to try and integrate some of these regen circuits into the construction as well, so they stick out a bit less like that. So if you go up to here, every so often, the dungeon will randomly pick someone at this altitude and summon a falling sand block containing diorite above them, which will therefore consequently mean that what looks like bird poop is falling down on them from above. It won't just happen randomly, whether or not there's a player up here, it will actually happen to players, so they'll get pooped on. Which is a hilarious idea that we just could not, like, we just could, once we had that idea, we realized we just couldn't, like, not do that, so that was an obvious idea. So that's the palette, and you can see it's mostly greys transitioning to greens, which allows us to work in the slimes as well, and then over here we've got the much darker contrasting palette, which will allow us to add highlights and other things as well. So here, for example, we have a support, we have another one over there. There's no actual reason for these different dry dock levels to be connected in any fashion, because this is the god who, like, literally created in, like, teleportation. Instant motion is entirely Aeneas's domain. But it's just a nice little structural element, adds a bit more shape to the place. I am probably going to add in a few more platforms, but we do have around about the 6 levels that we're going to have here, so yay. Obviously, one of your biggest concerns with this is going to be falling into the void. More or less every part of the platforms that we have currently are at least 2 blocks deep, so you can dig out a level and not have to worry about immediately falling into the void, but nonetheless I would be careful about that. But beyond that, falling into the void, where you'll just be immediately shunted back to spawn, where you can have a drink, make an ethereal brew, and now you can hop through one of the dungeon particles to get back here, although you can't do that until this particular dungeon is defeated, so it's good for more returning troops than anything else. But after that, you of course have to worry about falling damage. Now, if you have falling protection, or feather falling enchanted boots, then you don't have to worry terribly much about falling damage, but of course people don't necessarily have that here. Of course, what we do have to consider is that this area will be a spawning area for Endermen, so you can fight them to get some Ender Pearls, and then you can chuck your Ender Pearl towards whatever level you want to be on, but of course getting back up is harder, so again we focus on motion even more. And slimes... there was a suggestion in the comments of the last video that I should give the slimes feather falling boots. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be possible anymore. I've tried it out, and as near as I can tell, you can't give slimes any kind of enchanted gear. It would have been nice, but oh well, not much I can do there. So I'll find some other workaround. I might try and use a borked version of levitation potions to ensure that they don't just leap off the edge to their dooms, because of course only players get sent back to spawn when they jump into the void. Everything else just straight dies. But alas, alas, things we have to consider. And let's see, you've got Bird Poop Mischief and 6 levels approximately. I think that's all that was in the notes. But yeah, we had the idea that between the different parts where ships can move in to be serviced or constructed in the dry docks and such, and the different tiers that don't have to be facing the same way, what this will basically eventually end up being is a rough, cubic kind of shape, which gives this nice impression of a Borg cube. And if you don't know what that is, the Borg are a race in, well, a sort of a collective in Star Trek, whose main thing is that all of their ships are shaped like geometric objects. So they have the diamond, they have the sphere, and most commonly they have the cube, whereas everything else has actual, like, boat shapes and such. But we like the idea that this would look like a Borg cube in the end, because Resender is trying to build next to this. I think he's had this idea earmarked for a while now, and Resender is our resident Star Trek fanboy, so consequently he's going to be building a Star Trek ship to the side here. I don't know if he's necessarily settled on what design it'll be from the canon or the mythos or what have you, but it's going to be a Star Trek ship, so it seems only natural that it be built next to the dry dock or the harbour of sky ships and stuff, and it seems only more appropriate that such a harbour should be shaped vaguely like a cube. So, just a nice little bit of a reference there. Obviously, we are going to be smoothing out the terrain by using the stone bricks we have down there. We are able to have actual stairs and half slabs. Unfortunately, there's no such equivalent for andesite or for prismarine, which is a huge shame. But by using the smooth command of WorldEdit, which at some point I should probably do some kind of 101 guide to, we were able to create these much smoother areas than we originally had. I am going to be adding more detail to them over time, but that's going to be taking me quite a while longer than I presently have time in the day for, so consequently that's why I didn't end up doing that in that little time lapse. But the first thing I did, as you saw, was get rid of the rings, the concentric rings that Aeneas had of different materials, and that's just so I had a nice clean palette to work with, but after that, everything will be put together to look all nice. Gorgeous, more like this, for example. And as I say, we're going to have some huts, some buildings on these things, so like areas where Aeneas and the different harbour staff, including the harbour master, could go to work things out, plan things, work out, okay, which ship needs what, that kind of thing. And I should just get rid of this little streak here, because that shouldn't be there. So, there. Quick example of how to use WorldEdit a bit. And then there'll be other parts for controlling cranes, and for operating teleportations and that kind of thing. I don't think we'll have a centralized hub, because again, this is the domain of the god of motion, so a hub of teleportation is convenient, but not really necessary, especially when half of your harbour staff are Endermen and Slimes. So, we have that to consider. But there is still plenty more to do. I've got to finish up making the actual platforms so we know what areas need regen circuits, where we can take those circuits away so that we have less than 180 schematics to deal with nearer to launch day. I don't think we'll have everything done ready for this dungeon to be opened this month, but we might be on the roads to get it done for next month. So apologies once again to people who want to know a dungeon, but we are working on it. This is the first dungeon that is based on one of our actual members, so we want to make sure that it passes muster for them, and doesn't have any elements that they don't particularly like, that kind of thing. And of course, Aeneas, being a university student, at this time of year does have exams and other things to do as well. So it's more or less me playing telephone with Aeneas to figure out, okay, what does Aeneas want in the dungeon, and then building it, and that's not necessarily easy to do all the time. But I make these, I tell you these reasons and excuses every single episode, so I'll pass on that for now. But I'm going to make burbs poop on people for this dungeon, and I shall catch you all, hopefully,